Give it up for Jordan as she comes to bring the word today. All right.
You're gonna have to brace with me because I'm really nervous and I'm probably gonna stutter on my words. So
You're good.
Okay, so about I'd say a month, 2 months ago, I went to a conference called Inspire, and it's something that my church does. And there was a speaker there that's from California, and she spoke about Ruth. And Ruth has always been a story that I love from the Bible, and I really spoke with it because it's one of the few women that are actually spoken in the Bible, and I've always just connected with this story. But the way that this girl at Inspire gave this message really spoke to me, and Mr. Pack said that if I ever felt like I wanted to share something, that I can.
Amen.
And I really felt called to share this with y'all. So the title of this is called Nothing Just Happens. So, Ruth was an extraordinary woman who stood strong in trial. So for those of you who don't know, a little background about Ruth was she was married to a girl named Naomi and Elimelech. I might be butchering that name. But she was married to one of their sons. And in this time, there was famine going on. So Elimelech was with his family, and they were living in Bethlehem at the time. But since the famine was going on, he wanted to move them away from the famine. And they moved to a place called Moab. And typically, Jews wouldn't just go to Moab. It was how she phrased it is if someone from Roswell going to Albuquerque. You don't do that. You don't go from crime to more crime. It's just something that wasn't common in the days. And Jews don't really associate themselves with the Moabites. So it's not something common that happened. But he moved his family to that place to avoid the famine, which is actually really ironic because he ended up dying along with both of his two sons. So they moved to avoid death and ended up getting death anyway. So it was really ironic and not great. But God works in great ways throughout the story. So even though it started off awful, it gets better. So this left Naomi with just her daughter-in-laws. And when Naomi was in time of chaos, she went back to her community because you will always find healing in the people of God. So when she was going through this time, she went back to her community and her people so they could comfort her. Because the best place that you're going to find comfort is with the people that love God just as much as you do. So if you're ever going through a time of chaos, always go back to the people of God and always look for advice from them because they're ultimately going to give you the best advice. And we're going to circle back to that here in a little bit. So yeah. I'm trying to figure this out because I'm kind of scrambled.
You're doing good.
Bit. Thank you. So in Ruth 1:14, that's where I'm kind of going to focus this back on. It says, "At this they wept again, then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her." So after this had happened, Naomi was like, "Y'all go back to where you lived. I have nothing to give you. You were married to my sons and now they're gone. I have nothing to give you." And she was so persistent on them leaving because she felt as though she couldn't do anything for them. But actually, Orpah decided to leave. She went back to her community, but Ruth stayed. And one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is actually from Ruth, and it's Ruth 1:16. And it says, "But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or turn your back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." So this is really cool because I feel like most times when people tell you to leave, you'll leave. But Ruth was not of the really religion that they were, but she decided to stay with her mother-in-law, and she was like, "I'm going to be with you wherever you go." And the really cool part is she said, "I will believe in your God," which is really great because a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So a really big key point that I saw that she had said is if someone leaves you in a time of crisis, let them leave. Because real loyalty in friendship is going to be shown in the bad times, not the good times. A true friend is going to stick with you when things are going rough and you're in a rut, and they're going to help you get out of that. A not true friend is going to just leave you and be like, "I can't handle you, it's too much for me." And then another big quote that I heard was, "Some people are in your life for a season, but some people are in your life for your destiny." So that's why we really have to be careful about who we allow to come into our lives.
So good.
So a big thing that a character trait that is portrayed about God is providence. And the definition of providence is in God's wisdom, power, righteousness, and love, he is hastening slowly to work out his own eternal purposes for his own glory and for our eternal good. So I've never heard providence in this way, but I think it was really cool, and it really describes how the story of Ruth is portrayed.
Yeah.
So after everything happened and she decided she was going to stay, typically in this times, widows are really like belittled and looked down upon. Like if you're a widow, people are just going to like push you to the side. They're not really going to like acknowledge you that much, which is really cool because she ends up meeting Boaz and gets married to him, which typically wouldn't happen if he would see her and be like, oh, you're a widow, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, that's not how it's going to happen. But nothing just happens.
That's right.
So in order for Naomi and Ruth to be able to eat, Ruth had to work in the field. And it's really funny because where Ruth decided she was going to work happened to be in the field that Boaz supervised, and it was the field where he always stayed. So like, it just so happened that she was working in the same field that Boaz was over searching, and then he saw her. And in the Bible, it talks about like the heirs or whatever. I don't think that's the right word in the Bible, but that's what I'm using. So after the two sons had died, that was really Ruth's only hope. But actually, Boaz ended up being another person that was there for that reason. And it turned out for the good of her. So I'm going to do like a little phrase. So it just so happened that Elimelech knew to avoid death and received it in turn. It just so happened that Ruth stayed with Naomi instead of leaving. It just so happened that Ruth worked endlessly in Boaz's field. It just so happened that Boaz even recognized her. It just so happened that Ruth and Boaz ended up getting married. And it just so happened that Ruth ended up being the great-grandmother of David, making her a direct ancestor to Jesus. So the family line is Boaz and Ruth gave birth to Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David. And then 28 generations later, we see Jesus. So nothing just happens in the Bible. It says, it's like a bunch of, it just so happened. But all of these things actually went in order and ended up having Jesus come into play. So that's about what I've got. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to circle back to where we're going to find healing in the people of God. So I'd like some of the leaders to come up here. So during this time, I would like everyone can just bow your heads for now. So a lot of times we don't like to admit struggles that we're going through. But in reality, we are going through struggles and we need help. And there's people here always. I know each and every one of these leaders, they have it on their heart to always be there for you and always pray for you. So if you're going through anything, no matter what the struggle is, I just really encourage you to come and pray because you're going to find healing in the people of God and they will always be here for you.